All right, trucking on along. We're holding chapter 23. What we're going to do is, because we're very close to the end of the chapter, we'll finish the chapter, we'll stop the video, and then we'll restart. So we're talking about different advantages between doing a mitzvah and learning Torah. Each one has something special that the other does not, which is why you have to do both. You can't just decide, I'm only going to learn Torah, I'm only going to do mitzvah. When you do a mitzvah, we learned, that is Hashem's unfiltered will. No questions. I mean, it's very simple. Hashem asks you to do something, you did it, perfect. When you learn Torah, it's sort of watered down, because the way we understand it is not the way it exists up there, right? Torah, the angels are learning Torah, the souls are learning Torah. They don't understand the physical examples, for example, that are given in the Torah. Example, an animal falls into a pit and one owner has to pay. They don't know what a pit is. They don't know what an animal is. And the soul doesn't understand these things. It's not only that the soul's not here. They're in a totally different reality. Something happened with the phone here? Because it's, right, no. Because I'm getting dings in my ear. But if you to learn Torah, again, for you to learn Torah, it involves you, right? On the other hand, Torah is very great because that's Hashem's wisdom. It's Hashem's wisdom, and you're internalizing it. A mitzvah, you're not internalizing. You do the mitzvah. And sometimes, I tell you, put on tefillin, you'll feel very special and holy. Put on tefillin, and
not every mitzvah is related to the Jewish religion either. You
yes,
save someone's life or something.
But that's everything that we do is related to the Jewish religion. Now, it could be that other nations also find it as a good thing to do, but everything is in the Torah. That means the difference is we do it whether it's agreeable to our intellect or not, regardless. Yeah. Meaning, our intellect doesn't dictate, because it's in the Torah, our intellect doesn't dictate whether we do it or not. Right? So like, for example, there were times when society said that circumcision is mutilation and it's terrible. We did it. Now they're saying circumcision is healthy. We do it. We don't do it because it's healthy. We do it because the Torah says so. The same thing is for saving a life. The same thing is for not murdering and everything else. So let's say America decided, like Germany in 1939, it's okay to murder gypsies and blacks and gays and Jews. We didn't murder people because it's wrong, because the Torah says it's wrong. That's why, I know this is a little off the subject, that's why human intellect is a very bad barometer of what's right and wrong. Because sometimes the human intellect and society can decide, it's okay to enslave people because they're black.
That's why you follow the Torah.
That's why I follow the Torah. No, I'm saying, and throughout the generations, that's what I'm saying, throughout the generations, there were times that certain laws made sense to us, and certain laws didn't make sense to us. Certain laws that the society said, were bad, and our attitude is, the Torah says do it, we do it. The Torah says don't do it, we don't do it. You agree with it, good. Don't even agree with it, good. Also good.
It doesn't change to suit your needs.
Right. Like in the words of the previous Rebbe, there are laws that are created from life, and there are laws that create life. The laws that are created from life, so in every society, in every country, the laws are different, because society creates the laws based on a different society. But the laws that create life, those laws don't change. And that's the Torah. The Torah creates life. That's why throughout generations it hasn't been. So when you learn when you learn Torah, it says you are tapping into this unbelievable high energy. Now, it could be it's true. You can't understand it, the way it is up there, but it's a very, very, very tremendous high energy. It says V'zeh Yuvan 308 in the old print. Ira, new print?
316.
316 in the new print, 13th of Shvat. So V'zeh Yuvan, and now we'll understand what he said. G'dayla lama gadla me'ed ma'ila sa'isik b'teira. Yes, so why it's so great to learn Torah more than any other mitzvah. Even more than tefillah. So what are we doing when we're davening? We're davening, we're contemplating on the existence of God and how He works and everything else. So it's called bringing unity, yichud. Yichud means, because we see the world as diversity, dichotomy, difference, separateness, and when you're davening and you're contemplating on God, it brings a unity of how everything is just streamlined. But learning Torah is even greater than that. V'hadami, and this is similar. It says, the Gemara asks the question. But there's the Gemara talks about something very interesting. There's somebody who says learning Torah is his occupation. Not he learns Torah on the side. It is his occupation, and for such a person, he doesn't have. He doesn't have to stop. But for somebody whose Torah is not his occupation, meaning it's not his sole thing he does, he has to stop learning Torah to daven. But we just said learning Torah is greater than davening. So if you're occupied in Torah, why should you stop to daven? There's very few people that didn't have to daven because they were learning at such a high level. Normal people, regular people, had to stop. It says Hainu. Why? Because regardless, they would interrupt their study. So a man like Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, Shimon bar Yochai, people at such high levels that their learning Torah was such a high level that it was able to accomplish the same thing as prayer. But for a regular person who stops and starts his learning, every 2 lines you got to talk about the Yankees, or something like that. I remember when I was in yeshiva, we were 16-year-old troublemakers, right? So you're supposed to learn on your own. So the rabbis were very easy. You can see when a person's learning and a person's not learning, right? When you're learning, you're leaned over and you're shaking, right? But when you're talking about the Yankees, you're sitting back or you're sitting like this. So every time we try to talk about sports or whatever, movies or I don't know, whatever we're talking about, the guy would come over and bother us. So what did we do? We started talking about the Yankees doing this. Yeah. And one time, with an older guy, I don't know how old he was. One time he was like circling because he couldn't pick up what we were learning. And then when he realized we were talking about the Yankees, he wasn't happy. Yeah, he wasn't happy at all. I told you, we were a bunch of young punks. We were a bunch of troublemakers.
So when we were at 770, were most davening learning Torah or both?
Well, you can tell the guys who were davening were wearing hats and jackets, tefillin.
Right.
The guys who are learning Torah, usually you're not wearing a hat and jacket. You're sitting opposite somebody here, and you're crouched over.
Okay.
So I don't know if you realize in Shul, I told my son, you're davening, you're sitting back. You're davening. When you're davening and you're in a relationship with the Shem, you're alive. You can't be sitting back. It's an active experience. It's not spectating. Oh, look what's going on over there. That's that's what it is. All right. So now, the wise person, a maskil, now the intelligent person can bring down upon himself a tremendous awe when he learns Torah. Because how? Biggest problem when we learn Torah is we approach it as it's a nice book, best-selling book of all time, right? Or it's been around, so let me listen. I'll tell you, when I was a kid in yeshiva, we had Judaic studies and we had general studies. And in Judaic studies, we'd learn Talmud, or we learned Chumash, which is the Torah, right? Or we'd learn something else. Sometimes we'd ask our Rebbe is Hebrew for teacher, what subject are we learning? So you say, Torah is not a subject, it's a way of life. Mathematics is a subject. History is a subject. And then when we learned, is it still recording? Because I'm getting bings.
Yeah, still recording.
Sorry. When we learned, before we started the Gemara, or we started the Chumash, or the Mishnah, we would have to say, Zok der Heilige Mishnah, the Holy Mishnah says, Zok der Heilige Gemara, the Holy Gemara says. Because when you're learning Torah, you have to know whose Torah you're learning. That's why we make up lesson before we get an aliyah. Hashem chose us and He gave us a Torah. Too often we walk into it too nonchalant, right? It's a nice topic. It's a nice book. not just a nice topic. So that's why the Alter Rebbe says in page 308, when the intelligent person will think whose Torah he's learning, what exactly you're doing. For example, if you go to Yankee Stadium, well, now it doesn't apply because they broke down. They ripped down the Yankee Stadium, right? But so if you go to Madison Square Garden, right? And you go to Madison Square Garden and say, Willis Reed played right here, you know what I'm saying, or whatever it is. When you realize, wow, this is something special. So it's not a good example. It's a very coarse and poor example. But when you're learning Torah, if you don't stop and think whose Torah you're learning, then it says kishi's bainan. When a person will think, how is his soul and the garments of a soul, which we learn in chapter 4, your thought, speech, his mind and his mouth, are absolute one. Because what's the absolute state of unity? Is when we're on the same page, mentally, right? Like going back to a sports analogy. A player comes in the first season or off the bench. They're rusty. The quarterback throws it too far or whatever it is, right? Or the pitcher, or the catcher. But when they're playing it for a long time, they develop this. I don't have to say it. I just know. Like you married someone for a while, you don't have to know. You don't say it. Right? The only problem is when you don't say anything at all and expect you to know. My friend sent me a clip today of a guy. It was a video with his wife. He said, "I want to apologize to my wife for marrying a second wife in her dreams. And also, I want to apologize because I went to the supermarket and I asked her if she wanted anything. She said nothing, so I bought nothing. And I should have known she wanted something. So I apologize. It won't happen again, right? Right. But the highest unity happens when we're on the same page. When you're learning Torah, you are getting inside God's head. You're on the same page and the same wavelength, same mind length as the Eibusher. Now, how could that be? Alter Rebbe addresses that some in Tanya. It's a gift. Really, we shouldn't be able to learn Torah. Really, the entire Torah should be totally uncomprehendable to any of us because it's an infinite being, mind, and we're finite, limited creatures. How can we possibly understand anything? That's the way it should be. So it's like a bee. Shouldn't be able to fly, but it does. We shouldn't be able to understand, but we do. Why? Because Hashem gave us the gift. But you got to think about it. This is like, you are one, michad mamish. You're absolutely one, betachlas eichud, with the ultimate unity, beratzon elyon, with Hashem's supernal will, va'er and say baruch hu, and His infinite light, mamish and maskolabem, that is revealed in the Torah. So let's learn note 12 on the bottom of the page. Mm-hmm. The point of the following discussion of awe of Torah that Hashem usually engenders in the student and is relevant here, as explained by the Rebbe, as follows. He says, the Alter Rebbe has pointed out that the level of union with Hashem's will found in the study of Torah is greater than the union obtained through doing mitzvahs. And now goes on to say that as a result of this superior quality of learning Torah, the study of Torah is superior in yet another respect. It creates in the student a awe of God. So not only is the unity greater, but it helps. The effect of that is a person has greater awe of God, which the mitzvahs create in those who perform them. In fact, the latter quality is more important than the former, since the goal of all the mitzvahs is to lead us to fear. The superiority of Torah and mitzvahs is that attainment of this goal is more important than its intrinsic superiority with union with God's will, which means the whole idea is you have your awe and fear of God and you do the mitzvahs. Just learning Torah is nice, but what it leads to. Okay, back on top. He's saying here, everything is nothing. Which means like this, we give importance. Think of a social fad. I don't know, right? So let's say, for example, you're wearing a coat, is it polo, right? And let's say you're wearing a coat, whatever it is, right? Let's say society decided that polo is a good brand, right? It could be the quality. The quality is exactly the same, but society decided that polo is a good brand, so your jacket is $60, and society decided that your jacket, Jackie Mason has a joke. No one walks around Arkansas. You see the shirt, Arkansas. Or if it's Italian, no one walks around. You see the shirt, Arkansas, Kentucky, right? Whatever it is, right? So, and society decided because you're made in America, whatever it is, $20. It's not real. It's made up, right? So we understand, right, that we are, so to speak, lower because we're physical. Then you have the higher levels, the angelic creatures and all that, and they're special. But the truth of the matter is, everything's nothing. Everything's equally nothing. The highest angels and us, everyone's equally nothing when you're considering it. Who is being compared to? Who? Compared to the Eibishter. The angels don't understand. They have more understanding than us, but it doesn't mean they have a lot of understanding. They're still limited in their understanding. So think about it. You have this infinite greatest creature, not incomprehensible to everything, and everything is of zero importance to him. And yet he said, Ben, I wanna have a relationship. Now, if God wants to have a relationship, he has to be understandable. If I'm not understandable, then I can't have a relationship. Do you guys know what pacha is? You know what pacha is?
Chaz.
Pacha.
Pacha.
You know pacha is? No. Do you guys like pacha?
Never had it.
Oh, sorry, you can't like it or not like it because you have no intellectual understanding, right? So really, we shouldn't have an intellectual understanding. So the Eibishter came to us and said, I want to have a relationship with you. And that means I have to make myself understood. That should say, hey, the greatest entity where everything is zero decided that he wants to have a relationship with him. So he's lowering himself down in order so I can understand him. It's like when you play with your grandson, right? Why are you playing that game, even though you're capable of much greater things? Because you want to have a relationship with him. So you're doing things that really you think are meaningless. Now, obviously, your learning Torah is not meaningless. It's not a perfect example. But this is what he's saying over here. So he says, everything is zero. All the supernal world, uppers, lower world, are naught and nothing comparison. Right? The Eibishter's true energy is not invested in it truly. It surrounds it in an encompassing way, in order to give it its core vitality. Only a little glow of godliness is vested inside them. What they can withstand. It's too much, they can't exist. The perfect amount of energy, right? It's 110 volts, 130 too much, 100 doesn't light, right? Hashem gives each level exactly what it needs. Too much, too little, it can't exist. Too much, it would also not exist because it would be too much godliness. Nothing else can understand him. Nothing else can unify with him. A person thinks to himself, hey, Hashem is allowing me to comprehend him. That should have an effect on you. I think I've told this story before. It's a worthwhile story telling again. That the Maggid of Mezrich had an unbelievable class of students. Among them was the Alter Rebbe, Levi Yitzchak Berditchev, Levi Melech Lizensk, Zusha Vanapoli, Shlomo of Karlin. A lot of great men. So Zusha Vanapoli, the story is told once that the Maggid of Mezrich wanted to start a Hasidic discourse, a Hasidic maimer. He started off with the words, Vayemer Hashem al Moshe Lemor. Hashem said to Moshe, saying, and all of a sudden it dawned on the Zusha that God spoke to Moshe. God spoke to a human being. He stopped the class. What? God spoke to Moshe? I'm like, yeah, can we move on now? Maggid of Mezrich started again. I'm not getting it. An infinite God spoke to He couldn't get past that line until they took him and they threw him out of the shul because the Maggid wasn't able to get out the second sentence. But think about it. That's what's supposed to happen when you're learning Torah. It has to hit you in the head. Hey, whose Torah am I learning? If you learn Elon Musk, Starlink, whatever it is, you're like, wow, I can understand what Elon Musk says. You'd be very proud of yourself. You're getting into the mind and the infinite creator of heaven and earth, which no other creation can. That should lead a student to have some feeling. Possess your kosov. And this is what it means when it says in the pasuk, in the verse, in Devarim, Vayitzavenu Hashem es kol hachukim ha'ela liyiras Hashem. Hashem gave us all these commandments. Why? Liyiras Hashem, to fear Him. It doesn't mean fear Him. Oh my God, I'm afraid God's going to punish me. Oh no. It means to be in awe. Yira many times is translated as fear, but fear is not a good word. Fear is not fear of punishment or fear is going to hurt me. Fear is when you're in the presence of such greatness, you shrink. You don't have an existence, so to speak. So the more you learn, the more you're less. Right? You ever notice that about stupid people? They have big egos and a lot to say. The smart people are usually quieter, because the more you learn, the more you realize you have to learn, and the more you learn, the more you realize how small you are. Right? You ever see that how astronauts in outer space get along very well? They say because when you go into space and you see how small and insignificant the world is amongst the whole, all the planets, you're like, what are we fighting over? Right? It's only when we think of ourselves as be big. That's when bad things happen. And on this great fear, on this great awe, it says in Pirkei Avot, "Imein chachma ein yira." If there's no wisdom, there's no fear. What does that mean? There's no wisdom, there's no fear. It means if there's no appreciation of whose Torah you're learning, then there's no fear of God. You have to understand who exactly you're respecting. Torah nikres etzla tira l'derasa. The Torah is called by him the gateway to the dwelling, like it says elsewhere. Because learning Torah and understanding, what's going on. That's why, by the way, the Torah starts off in the book of Genesis. Why? That we should understand that God created the world and He chose one person, right? And the whole thing. And out of all the societies, He chose us. So when you learn Torah, that's not. Sometimes we think about it as a task, as a chore, and come on, God, why don't you choose someone else? Like Tanya says, right? Can't you choose someone else once in a while? But there's a custom among some chassidim, I think by the Polish chassidim, that before they do a mitzvah, they say, we say l'shem yichud before Baruch Shamar. We put our two tzitzit together, l'shem yichud, for the sake of the unity of the Shekhinah and God's name. They do that before every mitzvah to get them in the mindset. Get them in the mindset before you do a mitzvah. You're not just doing a mitzvah. When you learn Torah, you're not just learning Torah like Nike. You just do it. There's no just. The word just is a 4-letter curse word in Judaism. No such thing as just. You're learning Torah. It has to be approached with a tremendous amount of awe. Ella only. The problem is not everybody can withstand or sustain such a fear. Even a mind who can't bear such a fear, not even a minute part of it, because of the low root of his soul. We learned in chapter 2, if you remember, that every soul comes from the same place. But some hit some rocks on the way down, so to speak. Meaning some go through a more filtration process. And that filtration process, the result of that is that some people feel their source more, their soul more, and some people it's harder. Some people mitzvot and Torah come easier, some people it comes harder. Not because their soul is holier. It's some people their soul is more obscured, some are less. It says because the low gradation of 10 spheres regardless, even if you don't appreciate like the great people appreciate the mitzvah of the Torah, you still could learn Torah. And you still could do the mitzvah. Everyone, maybe you can't learn Kabbalah and everything else, but there's a section of Torah for everybody. There's no such thing as, you counted out. The Torah is too above and aloof. There's parts of, in the olden days, there are people that were really, really ignorant, could hardly learn. It couldn't read, couldn't learn. You have to realize learning Gemara, for example, is a skill. You have to learn how to learn. Abstract thinking, critical thinking. If a person doesn't learn it, this is one of the things that Gentiles, for example, don't learn in college. They don't learn critical thinking. They learn facts, information. Right? The hardest thing to learn is mathematics, usually. Right? But the Gemara teaches you how to think. So these people never went to yeshiva, never went to school. They took to school till 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. And that's it. So there were classes in different shows. There were classes in Gemara and Kabbalah, but then there were classes in Ein Yaakov. Ein Yaakov are the agadic parts of the Gemara. Easier stories, lighter learning. There's no such thing as I wasn't raised religious, or I'm not like you, Rabbi. I don't know how to read. These days, if you want to opt into God's Torah and mitzvot, everything's in English, everything's on Spotify, on YouTube, whatever. Even if your appreciation isn't as great as another person's, right? You say, I'll never appreciate the mitzvah the way the Rebbe is, or maybe some guy. Doesn't make a difference. You still can do it. Because learning Torah is supposed to lead to action. Meaning we're supposed to get so excited about learning Torah, what is the result? I better do the mitzvah. So even if the appreciation is not there, or you're not in the mood, put on tefillin.